The second lecture that you guys are going to watch is over economic structures. The two biggest economic structures are capitalism and communism. Communism is an economic principle, not a form of government. So why then do we have quote-unquote communist countries today? Why is China considered a communist country? Well, in order to fully understand that, we have to go back. And we have to go back to the beginning of when this economic principle was created. And then we look at what was said about it. We can find out how a country could be communist. So we want to start with Marx and Engels. This is Engels. This is Karl Marx. Both are German men. Both have epic facial hair. And both are going to contribute to the creation of communism through their writing of the Communist Manifesto in 1848. How it's going to work is that Marx, being a philosopher, an economist, but a philosopher, he is going to pronounce the Communist Manifesto and proclaim it, and Friedrich Engels is going to write it. And their main thesis in this book is that the history of the world can be defined as a series of class struggles. And we're going to see in our reading over the weekend that Marx is going to track this view of history throughout the Communist Manifesto. And the Communist Manifesto is a direct reaction to changing economic practices in Europe. So in the 19th and 20th century, we're in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, where the means of production move from skilled labor to unskilled labor. And that's not to say that these people didn't have skills, it's just that the skills that they had were not producing items, they were working on machines. So before the 19th and 20th centuries, what happened to production was that if you had a skill, you would make the item from start to finish, and then you would sell it. The earliest form of industrialization comes in the 2 centuries before, in the 17th and 18th century, where we have a transition from skilled labor to more unskilled labor first. But how it plays out is a little different. And this economic system is called mercantilism. And mercantilism, if we think about back to the colonies of the United States, mercantilism is what the Europeans did when they established colonies. Europeans went and established colonies for raw materials. They then controlled these raw materials, produced them into things that people could use, and then they sold them. So not only did they control the means of production, they also controlled the resources that allows them to do it, to create it. This made those European countries massively wealthy. And as a result of their wealth and these colonies, they continue to grow and grow and grow. And this is going to evolve into industrialization, where the production moves to factories, and the labor is not about making the products, but it's about working in the factories. And so Marx and Engels are going to notice the widening gap between the workers and the owners. The workers in Marx and Engels' view, were known as the proletarians, proletariat. So when you read the Communist Manifesto and you see proletarians or proletariat, think about the working class. The middle class, these owners of these factories, are going to be called the bourgeoisie. And the bourgeoisie are people who own factories and become super wealthy. Marx and Engels are going to argue that the best solution to fixing the widening gap between the rich and the poor was the elimination of class struggles. Capitalism is a little older than communism, attributed to Adam Smith in his book, The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776. Smith is going to observe, like most economists do, that an invisible hand was guiding business and personal decisions to benefit everyone. So what is this invisible hand? Well, this invisible hand is the market. And we kind of put the market in parentheses, in quotations, excuse me, because the market is a little ambiguous. It's a little vague. But what we mean by the market is basically you and I make decisions about what we want to consume. And as a result of those decisions, businesses are informed by that to make decisions based on those decisions. It's a lot of decisions. They're going to decide to make what you want, is what I'm trying to say. So if you don't want a VHS player anymore because there's a DVD player and you go buy the DVD player, they're no longer going to make VHS players. And if you want to stream your movies on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, businesses are going to try to get your business by not making DVDs, but by making streaming services. And so that is an example of the market guiding business decisions. And ultimately, both Smith and Marx are going to make arguments about human nature. And that's what I want you to look at when you look at the Communist Manifesto and the Wealth of Nations. How do they describe human nature? How do Engels in the Communist Manifesto describe human nature? How does Smith describe human nature? And where do we as people kind of fall along that spectrum? So, continuing with this idea about human nature, both The Wealth of Nations and the Communist Manifesto are both works of economics. Remember the definition of econ: the study of people and their choices with limited resources. At the core, these works are again about human nature. And it's revealed, human nature is revealed through business and through commerce. So these are different time periods, different ideas about human nature, but that theme is the same. That economic theme is the same. That as a society, we are always striving to figure out what it is about human nature. The second thing that I want you to find when you read the Communist Manifesto and the Wealth of Nations is to find places where you see Marx and Smith describing the role of government, because that is going to be how we get to a place where we have countries that consider themselves to be communist countries. Has to do with the role of government. So please look for both of those things as we move along.